Morning, Year 10. So we've been looking at decolonisation, the end of the British Empire. And today I want you to focus on three key individuals who all fought successfully for the independence of their countries. Kwame Nkrumah, who became the first leader of Ghana, which was itself the first country to gain independence from Britain in Africa. Jomo Kenyatta, who became Prime Minister and later President of Kenya, and Mohandas Gandhi, who you've probably heard of, um, who campaigned for many years for the independence of India from British rule. He never actually became the leader of India, but obviously he was successful in ending British rule, the British Raj, the British rule over India. So the basic task for today is to fill out those key individual sheets that we've used before to look at important people from the course. And the purpose of those sheets is to look at the actions of these key individuals. They all played a huge part in gaining independence for their countries. But in history, key individuals are important, I think. They make an important contribution, they change things, but it's more complicated than that. There are other factors that go towards those key individuals being able to make those changes. And the big 7 factors that we've looked at throughout this Migration and Empires course are a really useful way of us kind of drawing those themes together. And so what I want you to do is to look at the pages from the textbook. I've put some clips up from other websites as well, some short videos about these people that you can have a watch of. I want you to have a look at how the big factors went towards helping them achieve what they did. One of the big factors there is ideas, and there were certain ideas in the 20th century that really contributed towards these men having success. So if we look at Nkrumah and Kenyatta, they both lived in Britain in the 1940s, just after World War II, and they were both involved in something called the Pan-African Congress, which was a meeting that took place up in Manchester. Now, Pan-Africanism, pan means across, so everywhere, and Pan-Africanism is this idea that people in Africa should work together for their independence. Now, if you remember, when the scramble for Africa happened and the continent was divided up, those borders were drawn across the map of Africa, split between the colonial powers. When people started campaigning for independence, it was within those countries that had been split up, and this idea of nationalism developed. Pan-Africanism was supposed to be a sort of an antidote to nationalism. This idea, the borders have been put here by the colonial powers. Let's ignore those borders and work together. And it was an idea that never ultimately succeeded in the sense that those borders are still there today, but it certainly was an inspiring idea for many people, and not just in Africa. There were people in the United States who were inspired by this. All African people working together for their independence. Another idea that inspired both Nkrumah and Kenyatta was Marxism. Karl Marx, the founder of communism, he was long dead by the time that the British Empire was coming to an end. But these people were inspired by this notion, which at its most simple is the idea that everybody's equal. That's kind of the opposite to what the British Empire is about, isn't it? There were those ideas of social Darwinism. Marxism was a really appealing idea. This concept that everybody could be equal was a really appealing idea to people who were campaigning for their independence. Now, after World War II, as you're going to learn in Year 11, there was a lot of tension between the communist countries of the world who followed Marxism on some level, and the capitalist countries who were, in favour of democratic government, um, and so the countries gaining their independence in Africa, uh, there was a lot of tension which kind of spread over to that continent as well about whether the countries would actually end up following communism. Um, Gandhi, I think you might have studied him in your religious studies lessons, I'm not sure, but he was inspired by ideas, mm, some sort of ideas related to the Hindu religion, such as this idea of satyagraha, a truth force, and his whole methodology was that his his campaign for independence in India would be non-violent. That's actually had, if we think about the significance of Gandhi, which is the bottom section of your sheet to fill out, that concept of non-violent resistance has been hugely influential to people all over the world, actually. So, your basic task is to read up on these three men. There's the basic sort of stuff in the textbook. There's a bit more detail I've given you on some links. If you want to go off and explore in even more detail, see what you can find out about them, that would be great. And so then we can understand the role that these individuals played in bringing the empire to an end and gaining independence for their countries. But you can understand those individuals' roles within the other factors of the world that was changing rapidly in the 20th century, and you can kind of see them in their context rather than just as people who just magically appeared one day, gained independence for their countries, and then disappeared. Okay, enjoy the work, and I'll be back in touch next week.